Well, it's been a marathon of events and interviews here at the Gallagher Estate at Midrand in Johannesburg, where the results of the Wednesday's elections have been trickling in for the past 2 days or so. And just looking at the results as we see it now, which is obviously at around 6 p.m. this afternoon, the ANC still in the lead with 41.5%, the DA 22.4%, and the MK Party 12.6%. If you missed it, I was speaking to Professor Andre Duvenacher earlier on about the various scenarios that could come out of this election. But of course, those that interview is up there on Salam Media's platforms, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and you can always catch up with them. But without much further ado, let me introduce you to this esteemed guest who is here in our makeshift studio at the Rock, the executive mayor of the city of Johannesburg, Councillor Kabelo Gwamanda. Assalamu alaikum. Shukran for joining us this evening.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Mr. Mayor, I mean, you are here at the Results Operations Center. It's been an intense few days for, I think, every political party in the country that has contested this election, and not least for them, but also for South Africans who have been watching the results as they've been trickling in. Before we really get into it, I think it might be just appropriate to share your thoughts on the results so far. 70% of the voters are in.
Um, it's quite interesting. I think for South Africans at this point in time, it is a historical moment. Historical moment in a sense that post 1994, we have understood the value that comes with our vote. And in us having understood that, we exercise that right to determine the fate of the country. And it's not based on historical events only, but it's based on um, our trials, tribulations, as well as successes and failures. So the electorate is better informed at this point to make a decision that is going to ultimately define the government that they would like to see. In this particular election, they say it's a watershed election. And as you can see, there's a significant amount of new political parties that entered the space, but equally so, some of them have actually um, made their mark in the stats. We've seen political parties that were small growing by a huge percentage, um, becoming, in fact, one of the dominant parties in the national results. But this is this is not just limited to political parties that are there, but it is what the country would like to see the political landscape look like. And for me, I'm quite excited.
I mean, it is an exciting time to be looking at South African politics. We're looking at, for example, in the Northern Cape, where no party managed to get an outright majority. And that tells us we are heading towards coalitions. Um, of course, even on a national level, we're looking at the ANC still at the worst case scenario, around 40%. But this issue about coalition politics is not exactly new. Sure, on a provincial level, sure, on a national level, but on a municipal level, it's something we've been contending with for quite a while. In isolated spots of the country, this has been a feature as far back as the first municipal elections. But of course, it really did come into prominence in 2016 and then again in 2021. There were a number of mayors who occupied the hot seat in the chamber in Johannesburg, for example, and there was much instability from the perspective of residents. But you've been at the helm for the past year or so. What has your experience been like in that position?
So I just need to register the fact that I'm at the helm of the most complex coalition structures in the country. What that should tell our electorate is the fact that political parties are able to demonstrate political maturity. Not only do political parties seek to be in government for the purpose of power, but political parties understand that there has to be proportional representation across the board, and that's the primary objective of a coalition government in the main, whereby one party does not represent the entire country or the entire province or the entire city. People would want to have political parties that closely represent their daily lived experiences and struggles, represent them in municipal councils or provincial legislatures or national assemblies, so that they can have a guaranteed participation in one form or the other. So coalition governments, especially in a South African context, are an area that at this point is very much mature, and political leaders understand that they are there to serve the people. The city of Johannesburg has seen quite a number of sacrifices, and I mean in the current administration, from bigger political parties who were willing to come to the table, negotiate a political structure that would work for every party that is represented, because political parties that are in any form of government are placed there by voters. It's not by a recruitment agency that they are there. So every input, every opinion, every perspective has to be noted. And how we then find a way to manage our contradictions is formulating structures that would enable us not to impact the citizens or the residents in our decision making. But there will always be conflicting views, there will always be contradictions and conflicting egos. But ultimately, if there is a unity of purpose that holds political parties together, then a coalition government can and will work not only for the province but for the country as well. So,
Yeah. When we look at coalitions, then, and like I said, municipal coalitions are what we really have become aware of over the past few years. And when we look at the prospects of coalitions taking over in on a provincial level as well as a national level, I think the first instinct is to be a bit hesitant and a bit wary about how this might go, considering our experiences on a municipal level in the past. You came in as the mayor at what many have described as a very challenging moment for Johannesburg. It's a time where years of neglect finally caught up. We're seeing in the city of Johannesburg a number of incidents taking place where you've had explosions, you've had fires, you've had water outages, electricity incidents. It's just the challenges are endless. And as a mayor who then has to come in at a point when people are quite fed up with political leadership. They really feel frustrated. They know something needs to change. Of course, there is that challenge that is on your shoulders, that burden on your shoulders when you step into the mayoral office. But then you've also got the challenge of navigating through the what we could describe as uncharted waters of coalition politics, where you've got the EFF on one side, you've got the ANC, and I say that I mention those two parties because that's the arrangement in Johannesburg. How do you then, how have you balanced that, and not just yourself as the mayor, but also as Al Jamar, as this important figure in this coalition arrangement?
so I'm not sure. I'm going to talk from a personal point of view to try and give a proper context in
Mm.
terms of how we got to where we are.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if many residents in the city of Johannesburg know the fact that I had initially declined becoming a mayor. I had to be convinced. Um, and ultimately, I understood what it meant to become the mayor, not because of the conditions of the city of Johannesburg, the historical challenges of the city of Johannesburg, but the level of sacrifice that is required for any individual that occupies that role. You forego your life, you forego any other aspirations that you may have had. You solely focus on serving those that have elected you. Now, the political dynamic of a coalition that you've just alluded to is the fact that you are not just serving a constituency that put you in power. You are serving constituencies of other political parties as well,
Mm.
who are at this point who become more important. And I say more important because for for their vote to be used to put you in power, it simply suggests that there is a certain level of trust that is placed on you, and you then have to take it upon yourself to ensure that whichever promises have been made to communities, to constituencies, to residents are fulfilled. That's the first line of ensuring that there is harmony. You ensure that no party gets better treatment than the other, irrespective of its size, irrespective of its participation in either the executive or the legislation. Um, you maintain a central point of view. You adjudicate ideas. You manage contradictions, and you maintain balance in the bigger scheme of things. When it comes to a city like Johannesburg that has historical issues, and in the context of these historical issues, we understand that with the new dispensation in 1996, when they formulated the metro, and with an objective of rolling out service delivery to communities that were historically neglected, the the communities that had infrastructure then became the ones that were neglected in terms of what the objective or the priorities of the government back then was. That's where the decay and the aging infrastructure issues then come in. In 2023, when a new mayor is elected, now a new mayor is faced with historical challenges, is faced with a backlog, and is equally faced with ensuring that you continue rolling out services to the whole of Johannesburg. You need to find that particular balance. But it was unfortunate that this administration was overtaken by events, because when we began the process of assessing the level of infrastructure decay, we had already experienced an explosion that was described as a perfect storm,
Mm.
whereby an attempt to prevent a phenomenon of theft and vandalism of infrastructure then contributed to a bigger disaster when the street exploded, because they had to seal manholes, and from the sealing of the manholes it then created an environment underground whereby methane and gas started developing over time, and it got to a point where there was a spark, and that's where the explosion began.
Mm.
It is then the role of the newer dispensation to find a creative way to ensure that infrastructure vandalism does not continue. Measures that you put in place to deter such acts are measures that will not cause problems in the future. But equally so, the critical functions of a local government have to be reinstated, the likes of bylaw enforcement, for argument's sake, because when you enforce bylaw, you detect crime, and you are able to have a closer relationship with the South African police services, who are then crime combatants, and that collaboration would then find a way to mitigate the the the, the high crime levels that exist within a metro of this nature. But inherent in an economic hub, that elements of criminality would persist. You have to equally find a way to ensure that businesses thrive so that they can create employment opportunities to alleviate the poverty that would drive criminal activities. So, your approach at that juncture has to be considerate of a multitude of factors, from a historical point of view to the current status quo to possibilities that need to be prevented and achieved. I mean, we talk about our strategic priority of a smart city, but most people do not understand what it means for us to be a smart city. I mean, the camera rollouts that we are installing, that's an element of a smart city. but its effectiveness in terms of the efficient use of our technology is then what defines our ability or our direction as a coalition government to sustain our position in government.
I mean, I'm glad we're touching on the issue of service delivery. Of course, this is not a local government election, it is a national and provincial election. But the fact remains that when people do go out to vote, some of the things on their mind and their priorities really hinge on the stuff around them. And so when you're looking at the city of Johannesburg, for example, this is something, service delivery is something that has frustrated people for a long time. What are you then doing as the mayor to bring people in your confidence and say, we've got this under control? We know that we came into this municipality when it was experiencing the perfect storm, as you referred to it earlier on. But we are definitely taking action, and we have got this under control. We will take care of your needs as citizens of this city.
We promote an active and engaged citizen. One mechanism in which we use is an accelerated mayoral service delivery program, whereby myself, together with members of the mayoral committee, address service delivery related issues at a community level. So we do a tour across all 7 regions in the city, interact with the communities, address through all our municipal entities the service delivery breakdowns that exist over and above the IDP process that would ordinarily engage on to align the budget to the needs of the community. But any other issue that is service delivery related that we are able to respond to in the immediate, that is the primary objective of the accelerated service delivery. I mean, we've engaged with councillors across all political parties in their respective wards, in their respective regions, to address and attend to the service delivery breakdowns that they were experiencing. But we, as the city, need to ensure that we intensify on our communications, our social media, mainstream media communications, because it's most likely a misconception that the city of Johannesburg's service delivery is as it used to be. I mean, we've made significant strides over the past couple of months, and that has not been well documented. And the reason behind it, it's because we understand that in as much as we've responded the way we did, we have not yet scratched the surface. So it's too late. It's too early, rather, to want to go out and promote it. But the city of Johannesburg is functional. The city of Johannesburg is politically stable. The city of Johannesburg has got an administrative wing that responds to challenges on a daily basis. I mean, this rock center is testament to the city of Johannesburg's ability to host and to secure such significant undertakings that happen in the country that are of a global scale. So the city of Johannesburg needs to be given an opportunity to demonstrate its position in the bigger scheme of things. That is the message that I would want to register with the viewers and the listeners out there.
Well, Mr. Mayor, my seat's just warming up, and I was just getting into this conversation. Lots to discuss, lots to unpack, but I believe you must be on your way now. And so I must say thank you very much for taking the time to speak to Salam Media, to speak to the residents of Johannesburg. All the best with the rest of your work out there.
Thank you very much. It's much appreciated. Thank you to you, and thank you to your viewers and listeners at home.
All right, that was Executive Mayor of Johannesburg, Kabelo Gwamanda, speaking to us about his time in office here. It's been just over a year, and obviously speaking to us from the perspective of coalition politics, which is something very important coming out of this election. We'll leave it at that. Stay tuned. We'll come to you with more coverage as and when it happens. Stay tuned.